to White, over to Caruso for the lead! Turn up the 18!
Hello and welcome back to C-Red UK, where quite simply is Chicago Bulls thing. This podcast is part of the Fans First Sports Network, so wherever you're listening, rate, review, subscribe, helps us out and ensures you don't miss another episode. And if you're lucky enough to be watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the bell, give it a thumbs up and leave some comments down below. I'm Matt and as usual, joined by Neill. How are we doing, Neill?
Well, apart from looking like I've gone a few rounds in a ring with my wife, these are cold sores, by the way, not cuts. I'm good. A bit tired, always are after a night of having to endure some pretty awful Bulls basketball. But apart from that, all good. What about you?
Yeah, same. Tired. Work's gone to crap, which is going to make me even more tired as the week goes on. But it's what we do, innit? It's how we run. Bit of a different episode tonight. We've got some guests joining us. But before they do, we're just going to quickly talk about the Cavs game from last night. Obviously ended in a 109-91 defeat. We're not going to go too much into it because it was just crap. It was.
Yeah, I'd rather not relive it, to be honest.
Yeah. Obviously we kind of expected Cavs to be coming back from Paris feeling a little bit jet lagged, lethargic, but it was Bulls that played that way.
Yeah.
They went down, was it 18? Took the lead in the fourth and then lost by 18.
Ridiculous. When they worked so hard to fight back into it, only to basically end up losing by pretty much the same margin again. It was just awful to watch. It wasn't enjoyable. It's the first game now in a while. Win, lose is irrelevant. It's the first game in a while that I've watched and I actually really didn't enjoy watching.
Yeah, I couldn't even pick out a standout individual performance, really. We were trying as the fourth was going, and then, So, obviously, it was, the third game in 4 nights for Bulls?
It was.
So it's meant to be an easy stretch of games for us, but, we've got the West Coast trip coming up next week with Suns, Lakers, and Portland.
Mm-hmm. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, it's always fun for us. A 3:30 a.m. tip against Lakers. What's not to love?
Yeah.
Hence, I booked the day off work.
I was going to say, I was just going to give you props for that. That just goes to show your commitment that you've actually booked the day off, because otherwise it would have bled into your work day. So you're like,
Yeah, and I've booked the following Monday off as well for the Portland game because that's a 2 a.m. tip. And there's no way I could start work at 5 o'clock on a Monday from home on the back of a 2 a.m. tip because, it just wouldn't be fun.
No.
But, so don't know if you've got anything else on the Cavs game before we send it over.
No, I really don't. Like I said, I don't want to trudge through that again. It was bad enough watching it once. Yeah,
exactly. So we're going to be joined by the guys from the Horns Over Hoops podcast. From Chicago. I'll send it to them after our ad read. Now, our partners at USA Sports. USA Sports is a UK-based sports merchandise retailer. They cover the NBA, NHL, NFL, MLB, as well as Formula One. So from hats to hoodies, there's something for everyone. From Chicago Bulls to Team Red Bull and everywhere in between. So check them out at usasports.co.uk and at checkout, enter the code CREDUK to take advantage of the discounts. So, welcome back. And as I said before, we're joined by the guys from Horns Over Hoops podcast. Well, 2 of them anyway. Sal and Dan. So, welcome to CRED UK. Sal and Dan, how are we doing?
Doing good. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having us.
Yeah. We're good.
We're real good.
bit tired. Last night we'd stayed up to watch the Cavs game. We've already spoken about that previous to this, so we won't get into that mess. But apart from that, we're really glad to have you, Sal and Dan. And tell us a little bit about yourselves, a little bit about anyone that maybe hasn't caught your podcast yet, where they can find you, and a little bit about your backgrounds.
Yeah, for sure. So we are two of the three hosts of the Horns Over Hoops podcast. Obviously, our other host, Scott, had prior arrangements and he couldn't make it on. We're just three friends who grew up together. I mean, I've known Dan for probably around 20, 25 years already. And Dan and Scott have known each other they've lived across the street from each other their whole life. So yeah, I think one of the main things that tied us all together, our friendship together, was our love for basketball. And seeing as though we're from Illinois, our love for the Bulls just grew through their ups and downs. So one day we just decided, hey, let's make a podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah. Why not? If you've got plenty to say, you might as well say it to everybody, right?
Yeah.
So are you all 90s Bulls? Is that where the love started then?
For me, it started in the 90s, but like my family mainly went to Bucks games because we couldn't afford to see Michael Jordan in Chicago. And then obviously it died down once Michael retired, and I got back into it once they drafted Derrick Rose.
Right. Yeah.
So I got back into it right when D Rose came in.
Yeah. Pretty good timing.
I've been watching it for pretty much my whole life. I started watching, I think I was like 6 years old. It was just something that me and my dad kind of connected on. Mm-hmm. So I've been watching them for the past 29 going on 30 years and only have 6 championships to show for that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
They're all close together though. You got to celebrate it for a while before it fell off the cliff.
I suppose.
6 rings in 8 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go. Just those 8 years were a long time ago.
Right.
I mean, we've obviously spoke on our own pod before about how we're obviously 90s Bulls as well. Obviously, it was a lot harder for us at that time over here as to how it is now. With obviously League Pass, that's how we both basically get by with all the live tips and stuff. Obviously, being over there, did you actually get to many sort of games at the UC?
I mean, I try to go to at least 1 or 2 every year. It gets hard because, like Dan said, the ticket prices are always astronomically insane, despite the fact that the Bulls are, let's just face it, mediocre.
I mean, that's Jerry's fault. That's Jerry's fault.
Yeah.
Team will be trash, but still like $200 for upper level. Oh my God, can't talk today.
Yeah, I mean, we know there's a few sort of Brits that go over for a week, 2 weeks, stuff like that, and obviously they're saving for years to afford the flights to start with, then you got the hotel, and then obviously trying to get the tickets. You know, we've constantly got people sort of asking us, have we got any contacts, and blah blah blah, and it's like, well, yeah, but it doesn't mean you're going to get cheaper tickets, unfortunately. No, you know what I mean? Especially if they're trying to go over there for like a Bucks game, for example, or like the Knicks games, where I imagine the prices are that little bit higher. It's just not a lot we can do. I mean, we've got Team USA coming to London June. Is it June this year?
Yeah.
Obviously for their Olympic warm up sort of thing, and even for that, the ticket prices here are just ridiculous. So I think it's just the way of the world, unfortunately. And if you want to go see it, you got to pay for it, which we're not going to see Team USA, are we? So,
well, we got as far as booking the tickets, and then realised that the prices were absolutely skyrocketing, and all the cheap seats were gone like that. And so, I mean, I'd have to fly over from Ireland as well on top of that because I live in Ireland. So, it was just too pricey. So we knocked that on the head. Now, if there was a Bulls player representing Team USA, it might have been a different story. We might have been a bit more interested then. But as soon as we have no representation, I'm not that fussed.
Yeah, rooting interest goes out the door, I'm sure.
It does. It does, definitely.
Especially when it's going to be a LeBron-led team.
Is it? I don't even know who's on Team USA.
Well, I'd imagine for the warm-ups, LeBron won't bother turning up, but for the Olympics,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, enough talk about LeBron because Neill can't stand him.
Same.
We'll get on to why we're here, and that's the Bulls. Obviously, just hit the halfway point of the season, and what we wanted to talk about with you guys is your thoughts on the first half of the season. I guess really you could maybe split that in half again, from bad Bulls to the Bulls we're seeing now, basically. So I'll go to you first, Sal. What's your general sort of take on the first half of the season?
We definitely got some kinks to work out. I'll just say that it definitely didn't start the way we expected. As you know, we expected the Bulls to finish 6th overall in the East a few months back, and how the season started was absolutely abysmal. We were looking at is this team even going to win a game? I mean,
yeah.
We got schooled by the Detroit Pistons, who have only won 3 games since then. So it never looks good. Later on, more currently, I would say that they turned it around. Our shots have been falling. Looks like people are buying into the system a little better. We still have a couple things to work out, but I say we're getting there. We're in the right direction.
Yeah.
And what about you, Dan? What's your general take on it?
The first half of the season was straight garbage. It was a dumpster fire. It was embarrassing. I almost was embarrassed to be a Bulls fan in the beginning of the season, just because we did have them finishing at 6. They are doing better now. So yeah, I think there's definitely room for improvement. I don't think Zach will be traded, just because there's no market. No one wants him. And I really hope that Zach kind of takes a step back and looks at himself what can I do to be better as not only a player, but maybe even as a person? Because he says all the right things to the media, but as soon as the cameras are off, I bet you he just bitches.
Yeah, I mean, what did we start? Was it 5-14 to start, and then we've gone something like 14, that magical 14-9.
Yeah.
Since Zach first went out with his injury. I mean, it's been a mishmash, hasn't it? We've had to see players stepping up that ordinarily we wouldn't have done. I know you mentioned I think it might have been your last episode, about obviously the loss of Torrey Craig, and how big that has actually been. And I think we saw that against teams like Cavs, because we needed that 3-point shooting. We needed that sort of hustle, that, just basically what Torrey Craig brings. I mean, I'm a big Torrey Craig fan. I have been since we made the signing. Have you been impressed with the players that have had to step up, the likes of Dale and Terry, even when we've seen Terry Taylor? Obviously, we saw Drummond getting that starting role for a little bit. And obviously, that's without talking about Kobe White. Obviously, they've had to step up. Have you been impressed with how they have done?
For sure. Oh, Sal, do you want to go?
Sure. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, I would say the players that needed to step up, they definitely stepped up. I will say, Kobe White obviously stepped up and emerged as one of the best players of our team. Not only just a tremendous shooter, but an exceptional passer as well. I will say that there's been players that should have stepped up that I didn't particularly see them step up, but that's not necessarily their fault. It's because I don't think they were put in a position to play up to that certain level. Like, for instance, Terry Taylor, a lot of people don't realize that he's 6'5". You know what I mean? He's playing a small forward, but he is playing at center. You're not really going to stand out. You're not going to really excel when you're being bodied by the likes of Clint Capella and the other big men in the league. So I don't necessarily put that all up on them, but the players that should have stepped up, they have been stepping up.
Yeah. Yeah. Kobe's been a borderline all-star. In fact, like I'm gonna push even on your show because I've been pushing on our show.
Go for it.
Vote for Kobe. Vote for
Yep.
Kobe for all-star.
Yeah.
I do think I think that he should be an all-star. I do think that Kobe should win Most Improved Player of the Year.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just love the next man up mentality that we've had since when Zach went down, and then obviously Craig's down, and Drummond stepped up big time when Vooch went down.
Yeah,
So.
definitely. And the Kobe agenda, by the way, you're not on your own. We've been pushing that too. Yeah, so yeah, we've been on that. In fact, when we did predictions at the start of the season, kind of crazy takes that we thought may or may not come into fruition as the season went on. And one of mine was that Kobe would be in the conversation for Most Improved. So little flex there. But it's great to actually see that's actually the way it is kind of going. And he may not get it. And I think with the Bulls not performing particularly well, or certainly not in the higher echelon of the teams in the East, I think he could miss out as a result of that. But at least he's in the conversation. And the fact that he's in the conversation says an awful lot about Kobe and his development through the season.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, he's actually come out and said that he doesn't particularly want to be an all-star only because he enjoys the break, getting a chance to go home and spend it with family. And it kind of takes me on to, I don't know if you'd have seen the video that come out from the locker room last night, where he was holding himself accountable for his performance. I think it was Julia Poe that put it out on Twitter. And he's basically there saying, you know, he obviously blames himself, basically. Obviously 7 turnovers, you know, he can't be doing that. And if this Bulls team is to succeed, he has got to take that lead point guard role on, basically, and show that is what he can be. And something we spoke about when we were giving our player predictions at the start of the season is, well, I mentioned that I could see Kobe stepping in as that leader, initially to lead this sort of young core, but be that sort of bridge between the young core and obviously the veterans. And he seems to be doing that, you know, pretty well so far. Is there anyone else on the roster that's impressed you in the first half of the season? I'll go to you again, Sal.
I would say besides Drummond, like Dan said, I would say we don't get to see him very much, but Julian Phillips, the man is coming in and playing like a first rounder. And unfortunately for him, Billy doesn't necessarily give him the minutes that he deserves, because every minute that man comes out onto the court, he's playing with the same intensity. I mean, what was that game, if you guys remember, where he chased down a block, then he went on the other, it was against the Lakers, where then he hit I'm sorry, not the Lakers, the Sixers, where he turned around and hit a 3 right in Embiid's face. I mean, those are those silent assassins that I wish that the Bulls would spend more time developing, but for whatever reason, you know, Billy sticks to his lineup.
Billy's not the greatest coach. I don't think if we ever win another championship, Billy is not going to be the coach, and this is not going to be the core. I think we all know that, though.
Yeah, I think so. The thing as well with Billy, though, and this is to commend him on something, because I think he was certainly earning of the criticism at the start of the season, but I think he's also earned a little bit of praise as it's gone on, because I think it's become more apparent that Billy is trying to make them do a certain thing and try and make them work into a system, to a certain team kind of ball kind of game. And when the core three are there of Zach, DeMar, and Vooch, or Big Three, or just the three, whatever you want to call them, they don't seem to follow that system. Certainly not to the fluidity of the way they do when there is 1, 2, or all 3 of those out. The younger core and the younger players certainly seem to play into Billy's system a lot more. So for my way of looking at it, then it's not necessarily the system that isn't working. It's that the players aren't buying into the system fully. And hopefully with them having been out and watched this younger team make the system work, they're going to buy in. I think we've seen a bit of that they have certainly bought into it a bit more since their return. I think Zach has certainly been a little bit less dominant, ball dominant, and there's been a lot less ISO DeMar outside of the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, go on.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say, like, I noticed, like, as soon as like Zach went down the first, was it the first game where they beat, who did we play after the
Was it
Celtics?
Bucks? Because DeMar was missing as well, wasn't
he? They were both missing.
Was he? Well,
we beat Bucks?
anyways, I realized that they were passing a lot more. They're moving like faster and everything, and it seemed like the younger players do buy in. I think the only player that hasn't bought in is Zach, and it's because Zach and Billy just have this disconnect, and I think it was from when Billy benched him, like almost 2 years ago. Yeah. Like, I don't know. I'm over Zach.
Yeah, I mean that's where I was going to go with. The next one is obviously we've had these trades, rumors, whatever you want to call them, hanging over us. Do you think it's had a positive effect or a negative effect on the team first and foremost, and then Zach? And again, I'll go to you first, Sal.
I mean, as far as an effect on the team, I don't really think it's affected the team as a whole because, like we've seen, they have been winning. I mean, so whatever, and not only have they been winning, but Zach has been on the sidelines. He's been part of the team, cheering him on. He's basically acting like nothing's happening, like kind of sweeping it under the rug. So it's been a contributor to the positive end of it. As far as to Zach, I would say maybe when his return came around, he tries to play a little bit too unselfishly, try to get his trade stock up by showing teams that he can be a team player. Whether it be he realizes he's going to get traded and not be a first option wherever he goes. So the best thing he could do is be that team player. But as a whole, I would say it had minimal impact to the team, more so for the tabloids than for the team. So,
yeah. And I know, obviously, Dan, you've just mentioned that you're kind of done with him. So I guess you think it's been obviously a negative effect for Zach, but
for Zach, but positive for the team. And like, I think, Sal, I sent you an article today on Facebook about how Zach is getting frustrated with Billy using him more as a 3-and-D guy and not really showcasing all of his skills. So I think that's just going to put fuel to the fire. Hopefully we find something for him. Because I think we're better off without him at this point. Because I mean, if your best player isn't going to buy into the system, then you're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, actually, while we're talking about Zach, I was listening to your last pod, and you were talking about Zach LaVine. Which one of you was saying he was a bench player?
So that was me. That was me.
You,
I'll
Sal,
take full ownership of it.
Okay. Right. So this is your opportunity. Okay, you've sold it to your listeners. Try and sell it to our listeners that Zach LaVine is just basically a glorified bench guy.
By the way, real quick, he still hasn't sold it to me. Like, okay. Zach is not a bench player.
No, in fairness, I did notice there was a lot of pushback from the other two people.
Yeah.
So,
it's just nonsense that he's about to speak.
Nonsense.
The floor is yours, Sal.
The
floor is yours.
So it's simple, okay? Like we just said, like we've been mentioning, like the team basically has shown, we're moving more towards a younger, faster dynamic, okay? Of which Zach LaVine does not buy into the system, okay? And he does not run with the starters very well. Let's just face it. That first unit, Zach LaVine, seems like a man separated from the pack. Now, I'm not saying he's a glorified bench player anywhere else in the league. I'm not saying that at all. On this team, with this current roster, his skills are more utilized coming off the bench to provide that quick scoring, that catch and shoot mentality. On the second unit, he can be that guy that runs with a Patrick Williams, an Andre Drummond, the Torrey Craigs the Javon Carters, the players that are going to, I would say, distribute the ball more and buy into him a little. He could be that secondary leader, more or less. Okay. If Billy chooses to run with the starting lineup of Kobe White, DeMar, and Vooch, I just don't think that Zach fits into that as well as people think.
Okay. Matt, take it away. You look like you've got lots to say.
No, when I was just listening then, that was kind of how I saw Kobe at the start of the season. You know, like you say, running that second unit, and the whole debate at the start of the season was who gets to start, Javon Carter or Kobe White. Obviously, we've seen how that's gone, and rightly so, because Javon Carter wouldn't start for any team in the league, let alone Bulls. You know, obviously, the big sort of pushback I'd imagine on Zach being a bench player is the fact he's on 40 million a year.
Right.
You know, and Zach obviously doesn't see himself as a bench player. Zach sees himself as, well, particularly at Bulls anyway, as the number one. Mm-hmm. We saw what was happening in them couple of games where he come back at Hornets, coming off the bench, and you know, obviously it works. It basically says what you've just been saying. But obviously, realistically, nobody's going to play him off the bench, are they? You know, whether not yet in his career anyway. I wouldn't have thought. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting take. Yeah. Which we saw it work. So
yeah,
you could have something.
Yeah. We definitely saw it work, and that was actually going to be, you know, I've got two sides to the argument, and one of those was going to be the exact point that you have to make in there was we actually got to see 2 games worth of that side of it, and yeah, I mean it worked. Now it worked against the trash Hornets team that's broken, but it worked, right? So there is definitely an argument to how effective it could be, but then at the same time, you know, Zach LaVine should be very effective off a bench in any team because he's a 2-time All-Star. He's an elite scorer. He's beginning to show signs of being interested in playing a bit of defense. Mm-hmm. Not exactly going to be putting him forward for all defense or anything like that, but he's at least trying. And I think that the minute you turn around to a player like Zach LaVine, who has, as we know, a bit of an ego, you are going to come off the bench because we think you leading the second unit is going to be more effective for this team. You've lost him completely. He's not going to step on that floor and pass the ball or be the same player that you would expect him to be coming off the bench. So instantly you're going to make it null and void because he wouldn't buy into that. And that's not saying that it wouldn't be effective if he would buy into it, because yeah, it would. But you're not going to get Zach LaVine at 40 million coming off the bench and being a happy man. He'll go back into his little petulant child type motion, right. And exactly. you lose him completely.
Oh, sure. I'm not more or less saying that he would take it well. I'm just saying on any other team, taking salary out of account, because let's just put it this way. You're making $43 million a year. You're starting. Okay. Yeah. We've invested in it, but I still think the Bulls made a huge mistake giving him that big a contract. That's all. I mean, I don't think he makes that salary on any other team except the Bulls, because he was a player that shone on a team that was, let's just say it, mediocre. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. When you have that one player that excels, you're going to stand out. But when that one player standing out amongst mediocre players, he's going to shine that much better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, you know, I'm only playing devil's advocate, of course, but I do think that at that time when we were signing Zach, the Bulls were kind of in a corner. They'd put themselves in the corner. They kind of had no choice but to do it. And if they hadn't given him the contract that they'd, you know, almost publicly had promised him, it would have been quite damaging for the reputation that was only just beginning to recover around the league anyway.
Mm-hmm. And it's for that reason that I said that the Bulls should have traded him last year. Mm-hmm. He had the expiring contract. He was at the peak of his talents. I'll just say he had the best season he's ever had as a Chicago Bull. and now they sign him to this huge contract. He's not playing to the way that they want him to play, and now I don't want to say stuck with him, but that contract of his is making it that much harder to get rid of him.
I mean, I think that's one of the main reasons that the market's so dry is no one wants that contract. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, and also you're not getting a return on that kind of a contract from him.
Exactly.
Yeah, and before we move on to our hopes and expectations for the second half of the season, another player who certainly at the minute is very topical amongst Bulls Nation, shall we say, Nikola Vucevic. What's your opinions on him and obviously the deal that he was given? And there's a lot going around at the minute that he shouldn't be starting. Drummond should get the start. We should trade Vooch and all that sort of stuff. So what's your opinions on Vooch?
Vucci Main. Look, here's the thing. I love Vucci Main. I do. Vooch he's my son's favorite player. Okay. But I think that Vooch is a tremendous player. I just think that father time is kind of knocking on his door. If you noticed last season, he played all 82 games, almost had a double-double in almost every single game. I mean, I think he was second in the league in double-doubles. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now it seems like he's letting people body him down low. He's not really crashing the defensive or offensive boards like he should be. That little push shot that he hasn't really been hitting him with consistency. His 3-point percentage, I think, dropped. He was shooting 33 last year, and now it's in the 20s. I mean, it's just father time catching up. I do think that the contract he got, though, was well and deserving, because if you looked at the market last year, or this year rather, when we signed him, who would you have gotten as a better replacement starting caliber-wise? If you guys could think of any names of big centers that could slide into an automatic starting position to fit the direction our team is going for, you know what I mean? They weren't going to come cheap.
No. The only player that we were kind of looking at that time, and like that, you're talking about the cost was Jakob Poeltl.
Oh, okay.
But obviously that didn't transpire anyway. But we're not anti Vooch, but we are certainly very frustrated with Vooch.
Yeah.
But like that again, same as the Zach contract, the Bulls were backed into a corner again with Vooch. There was no market for him and no market out there to get anything better if you let him walk. So they'd no choice but to sign him again.
Yeah, and Dan, what's your sort of take on Vooch?
Yeah, like Sal said, I think father time is catching up with him. Lately, he's reminding me of Pau Gasol when Pau was on the Bulls. Just like, I don't want to say like a shell of himself, but he's getting there. Like next season, he'll probably be a shell of himself. Just, I don't want to say garbage, but like borderline garbage.
But Pau Gasol was all-star with the Bulls, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he was. I mean, Pau was amazing. Pau still is amazing. Pau is one of my favorite players in the NBA. But I mean, I'm just seeing like every single play isn't what I'm expecting from Vooch.
Right.
Because at one point you could argue, like when Vooch was on the Magic, you could argue that he was one of the best centers in the East, easily. And now it's he's still one of the best, but I mean, there's only like 4 good centers in the NBA, right, on the East anyways.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's the last good big man in the East. So,
yeah. I mean, apart from triggering Gary, who's in our chat with the Pau Gasol talk there, he can't stand Pau Gasol, by the way. But anyway, obviously last night we saw Vooch and Drummond on the court at the same time. It's not something that we'll probably see much moving forward. But did you find in that it was basically when Drummond come back on the court, that's when things happened? Vooch just kind of went a little bit, if he can go more passive, he went passive, and he was just basically out there as another body. whereas it was Drummond that was grabbing the boards, it was Drummond that was getting the points, and then Drummond sat before Vooch, and that was it. We just lost it again, and that's obviously credit to Drummond, because he's basically staying ready as much as Drummond can and just causes chaos. And we coined the hashtag embrace the chaos when he's on the court, because it's entertaining to say the least. But would you start Drummond over Vooch, or is that not in your head?
Well, go ahead.
We actually talked about this on the last episode we recorded. It's not out yet.
Yeah.
But no, I would still start Vooch, just because Vooch still has that passing ability. Like, his court vision is better. He might not be as aggressive as Drummond, but he's like skill wise, I still think he's more skillful than Drummond, because Drummond will just be around the basket and get the board. That's his job. He knows his role. He dominates in his role. Meanwhile, Vooch can add more versatility to the game.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that was kind of like what we said when Vooch come back from his injury, is that Vooch gets the starting role just because it does offer that little bit more, but it doesn't mean we have to see Drummond drop back down to 13 minutes. You can give Drummond 20 minutes a night and he will outstat Vooch if he's on it, basically. Because Vooch, like you said, he gets the double doubles, but they seem quite lazy double doubles. His rebounds definitely, anyway. His points, you've got to work to get the points, put it that way. But his rebounds is just basically seems to be got it, and that's it.
Yeah.
Or the little volleyball tap away, which just infuriating, because it's just like, you're there, just grab. We've been through it. Been through it with P. Will. Having to get him to grab boards. Do you know what I mean? It's because he was doing the same. He was going up, and it's just like, you're there, just grab the ball.
Right.
At least that's what Drummond does. If Drummond's got the ball, very unlikely you're getting the ball off him, unless he tries to dribble it, and then just chaos ensues. I don't know. Have you got anything on the last half, Neill, before we move on to the next half?
No, I guess you just brought up a certain player that tends to land into my tweets quite a bit, which is Patrick Williams. I don't know how you guys feel about P. Will. I'll give you a second to talk about him in a second, but I'm a big advocate for Patrick Williams. I still think there's so much more that he needs to improve on. But if he can, and it's all in his head, as we know, everybody's talked about that in the wider Bulls Nation, that it's not the physical aspects of P. Will, it's the mental aspects of P. Will. I think the first half of this season, particularly the back end of the first half of this season, when the core three were down, Patrick Williams has really shown that he's beginning to get that bit more aggressive. And what I'm afraid of is, now that things have kind of come back to being almost complete, that he's already beginning to show more passive pill, and that's my concern, passive P. Will, and that's my concern. What do you think about P. Will, Dan?
Again, it's funny because we talked about this on our unreleased episode. That I also noticed that since Zach came back, Pat's been more passive, and when Zach's down, he's the Patrick Williams that I always thought he could be. I do think it's all mental. I don't physically look at the kid. You can't tell me it's a physical problem with that kid. Are you kidding me? It's definitely mental. He just needs to be a little bit more aggressive out there on the court. Like, he knows what he's capable of doing. The team knows what he's capable of doing. We know what he's capable of doing. Just do it.
Right.
Nike.
Sal, what do you think of him?
I know I give him a lot of flack on our show, but deep down, and not even that deep down, I am a big fan of Patrick Williams. I do think that it's going to hurt to say this, it's going to hurt to hear this, but I do think Chicago Bulls organization and fans are trying to make a golden egg out of just a regular egg. I do think that Patrick Williams is a tremendous athlete. He's very athletic, but I just think that's who he is. He's going to be the guy to play lockdown defense, grab the occasional board, hit the outside shot, slash to the lane, get a couple buckets, basically get you 10 points a game. The only stigma behind that is the fact that we drafted him 4th overall. I think if we have drafted him anywhere outside of the lottery, this guy would have been a stupendous pickup. But because when you're drafted 4th overall, your expectations are higher, it kind of takes you a step back a little bit. Now, what have I've noticed from last year to this year is a player that has, I don't want to say fallen victim to not feeling good enough, because I noticed when he is on the court with Zach and DeMar, he kind of takes a back seat and doesn't even shoot the ball. He's passing up wide open looks for fear of either missing the shot or to get, I don't know, scolded at by Billy for not passing it to one of them. It's in his head, a mental thing, like you guys said. However, I do know when they're sitting on the bench, he shines. You know what I mean? Face the facts is he can get you 15 points a game, but he's not going to. He'll get you 7-8 points, 6 or 7 rebounds, and a few assists. Okay. And that's a win in my book.
Yeah. Once we see 1 or 2 sexy rainbow threes, I'm happy. But I do just wish that he would change whatever brand of hand cream that he's using, because the guy can't see it. Like, he has hands like shovels, and yet he can't seem to hang on to the ball. Whether it's catching a fast pass, dribbling the ball, or going up for a one-handed jam. Because, well, when he gets the one-handed dunks, they are amazing to watch. But more often than not, he seems to slam them off the back of the rim. Whereas if he goes up two-handed, he'll flush it pretty much every time.
Yeah.
So that's about it for, I suppose, the first half of the season. So we can move on now to how we feel about what's coming up, I guess, in the back half, in the next, what's left, 40 games?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're going to have trade deadline, all-star break, buyout, all that, the usual exciting, 4 weeks that we get at that sort of time. Obviously, before we get into what your expectations are for Bulls for the remainder of the season, do you see any moves being made? Do you want to see any moves get made? Whether it's trade, buyout, whatever. And again, Sal, I'll go to you first.
Do I see trades being made? Yeah. I don't think it's going to be the trade that Bulls fans are expecting to see. I don't see Zach LaVine being traded this year. If we make a move, it'll be a role player and acquiring another role player. If I'm the Bulls right now, I'll tell you what, the one thing I'm doing is trying to get a big man, because we are lacking in big man 100%. Because in another team, not to segue, you could run Vooch and Drummond together and run the 2 big men front. But the problem with this team is your backup big man is a 6'5" guy in Terry Taylor. So the only trade I would do would be to try to get a bigger player. Bismack Biyombo's out there. Just a thought, maybe going after him. Well, he's a body though. The problem is you need people that can take up minutes, because I'm going to use this opportunity to shout out my guy, Adama Sanogo. He came in, stepped up, and played phenomenal minutes, and the Bulls are not even batting an eye to him. If you see what he's doing in the G League, the other day he had a 32-point, 17-rebound game. He's averaging almost 2 blocks a game. Why is he wasting away in the G League?
Preaching to the choir.
Yeah. So if I had to say one thing that I would change for the second half of the season, beside just weather the storm, let's just face it, we're not taking home any hardware this year or next year for that matter, but just get a consistent lineup going and have players learn their role a little better. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was going to say, just before we go on to Dan, obviously I put the tweet out before about Sanogo, his last 3 games down for Windy City, and obviously what he's done for the course of the season. And like I say, you're preaching to the choir, because I watched the game last night and he hit the game-winning free throw, which is something that I've kind of compared him a little bit to Drummond, but he seems a bit more composed than Drummond.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is the G League, and I've heard people say, "Well, look at what Marco was doing down in the G League," but then, and I don't think that's on Marco. I think that's more on Billy, to be honest. Like you say, if you don't give them a chance, you're never going to know what they can do. And if we'd have had Sonogo last night, you had somebody else there that could just come on the floor for maybe 2-3 minutes to give Drummond that rest, or give Vooch that rest, and still run 2 6'10" plus guys. Do you know what I mean? That can grab boards and do whatever they need to do. So yeah, definitely preaching to the choir on that one. Yeah. Anyway, Dan, back to you on the. Do you see a trade happening? Do you want to see a trade happen?
I would love to see a trade happen. Do I think one's going to happen though? I mean, you got to remember this is Chicago Bulls. We don't really make moves. Like I was thinking about today, and I would not be shocked at all if we stand pat at the deadline and do nothing. I do think obviously this team does need to switch it up. I don't know if it's a full rebuild or retooling, but something needs to change. And I think all of it's going to happen in the offseason. I think this offseason we see AK and Mark Eversley look at the roster, make drastic changes to it. And if I was them, I would build around Kobe and Pat.
Yeah. Right. So hashtag continuity then.
Yeah. It's cohesion now.
Yeah. Oh, cohesion. Okay.
Yeah,
it's less of a trigger word, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not a dirty word. So, I mean, I've asked Neill the question before on our pod. What would you see as how the season's gone so far? What would you see as a successful season for this Bulls team as it is at the minute? Obviously you said that you saw him being a 6 seed. I'm assuming that's maybe slipped slightly.
No. I still think that they can, even with this current core that they have. I still think if they buy into the system, mainly Zach, then we can finish 6th. Like right now we're 9th still. So there's no reason. Then that happened when we started buying into Billy's system. So if you continue buying into Billy's system, making the right pass, just being smart with the ball, you should be able to jump up to at least 6.
Yeah. I mean, it's not outside the realm of possibility. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And what about you, Sal? Are you still riding the 6 train, or?
Oh, easily. Yeah. I think this team, as it stands, is way too talented not to be a 6 seed. The problem is, like Dan said, like we've been preaching, is the people not buying into the system. I think all it takes is Zach LaVine and all these guys to be like, all right, listen, this is the team. Let's at least make the most of it while we're here. As long as you guys are wearing a Chicago Bulls jersey, let's play Chicago Bulls basketball. And that's why, again, like I said on the unreleased episode, let's sit down with Zach and say, hey, maybe this isn't the role you wanted, but let's all try to make the push. We're all working towards the same goal, and that's to make a playoff appearance and in some case a championship run, but not on this team. But I think this team is talented enough to get a 6 seed easily. If you look at the East, all those games are decided by not many games. I mean, everyone's sitting at right around the same record. I think a couple wins and a couple, go on a couple streaks, we're right into that 6 seed easily.
We also have the easiest schedule for the NBA for the second half.
Yeah.
So again, we should be able to get that 6th spot.
Yeah.
Plus, we've also played the most games. I think, is it us and Houston have played the most games in the NBA right now?
Yep.
So, I mean, we're due a bit of an extended break at some point, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we need that as well, that extended break, though.
For sure.
Yeah. Sure. God, yes.
Yeah. Just remember, everything changes after a trade deadline and waiver wire and free agency. It's going to be a long season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is.
Yeah. Kind of feels like it's only just starting for Bulls in a way, and like you're saying, obviously you think they're going to get the 6 seed. It kind of needs teams to fall off for that to happen, and At the minute, it looks like Magic are slipping a little bit. Obviously, Pacers have just lost Halliburton, yet don't seem to be losing games, which, fair play to them. Knicks obviously just done that trade to get OG Anunoby. Seems to have worked well for them. So it's difficult to see which team, apart from Magic, is going to drop that Bulls can actually catch, because obviously we've seen we can't beat Cavs one-on-one anyway.
Yet. Yet.
But like I say, there's probably going to be a lot of other teams that make moves before Bulls do, or instead of Bulls making them, and that can go either way. Some teams are going to win trades, some teams are going to lose trades, and I don't think there's going to be that much movement above Bulls now that Knicks have made their move. Possibly Cleveland start, obviously Mitchell's in sort of talks again, and Ian Garland. And then you look at the teams below, obviously Hawks are shopping DeJounte Murray. So there could be a team that pushes from below Bulls as well, maybe, and we've both said sort of playing is probably going to be seen as a successful. Can't get my words out.
Try again. We can wait.
Seen as a successful season. From how we started, anyway, that's not where we wanted them to be. I think we picked them as a 6 seed as well, didn't we?
Yeah.
At the start of the season. But when you look at what we've been through with all the injuries, and still kind of going through the injuries at the minute, the whole Zach thing, we've said we don't want to see the likes of Kobe and P. Will become losing players. We don't want them to have that mentality. We want them to be pushing for every win. So, like all these fans that are saying they want to see us tank, this Bulls team's never going to tank, because they're too good, and two, you don't want your players to get into that losing mentality, that losing mindset. So yeah, from our point of view, we kind of said playing will be the success. Anything better than that, bonus.
Yeah.
All
really?
Right. I like it. Yeah. As long as we're in the play-in, that'll be fine. We're not going to make it very far, but yeah.
82 games isn't enough. We want more.
Yeah. Well, we got 84 last year.
Yeah.
This is true.
Just remember, our entire core is built around the fact that
we
Miami
almost
Heat
beat the Heat.
Yeah, and they made it to the final. So
get out of here.
And that 14-9 at the end of the season with Pat Bev.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on Pat Bev. Anyway, so I think what we can take away from it is basically, and we're pretty much the same. There is a certain level of hope now for this team that was gone. I mean, I don't know how you guys felt, but from the start of the season and the way we started this season, the big conversation that was going around was that this Bulls team weren't even going to qualify for the play-ins or even come close to qualifying for the play-ins. Now, all of a sudden we're finding ourselves sitting, 2 or 3 games at 9th position, and we are in the play-in conversation with a good chance, like you say, we've got a good schedule of climbing the ranks at least a small bit. Let's hope they do, as you say, and get up into the actual playoffs so we don't have to endure the play-in as well.
Yeah.
Although I would like to hear DR DeRozan screaming to help us win at least one more time this year.
Oh yeah, that girl needs to be given some sort of a contract that she's she's able to sit at the sideline and scream her lungs out every time, especially when she's playing the Raptors.
Yeah, give her a statue next to Mike in the atrium.
There you go.
Well, we've got Raptors next up, haven't we? So
we
never know if
appearance.
She might get a snow day at school or something and get up there.
So, I guess we've kind of come to the end of what we expect to see. We're all hoping that we get somewhere a little bit higher than where we are right now. Thanks very much for joining us, Sal and Dan. And for anyone that hasn't checked them out on the Horns Over Hoops podcast, definitely go and check them out. Find them, look them up, follow them on Twitter. You guys are on Twitter as well.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to explain to everybody where they can find you and where they can follow you.
All right. So at Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to a podcast, you can find us. Just look up the Horns Over Hoops podcast. We are on Twitter/X at the Horns Over Hoops. And basically we have a link tree attached to every one of our podcasts that takes us right to our socials. Yeah, we're or YouTube. We have a YouTube channel as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So go check them out. And thanks once again, guys, for joining us. It's always nice to have other people to talk to rather than just Matt. And we'll tune in to the show and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, fellas, thank you for having us. We appreciate it. We've been looking forward to this for a while now. Let's do this again on our cast. What do you say?
Yeah, sounds good. Definitely.
All right. Good night. Cheers.
Bye, guys.
So welcome back to just me and Neil. Obviously thanks to Dan and Sal for joining us. And as we said, go check them out. They put some good episodes out. And hey, they're just like us. Enjoy talking about Bulls. So what's not like to like? What's not to like? Easy for me to say. So we're gonna finish how we normally do with some predictions and a quick shout out to Chicago Bulls themselves, who turn on the day of recording, 58.
Yeah.
January the 16th, 1966 was the day that our beloved Chicago Bulls were formed. So, happy birthday, Chicago Bulls. And let's hope we can go back to our youth and get some rings.
Yeah, be nice.
Predictions. Obviously, chances are our next recording will be next Tuesday. We've got 3 games between now and then. First up is a trip to Toronto to face the Toronto Raptors with newly acquired RJ Barrett.
Yes.
I don't know where they are in the standings. The 12th, maybe something like that. I think last time I looked. As I've always said, I hate playing Raptors. Might be a little bit different now. Could be a little bit more different when Spicy P ends up leaving. I've always said nothing against Raptors. Don't mind them as an organisation, all that sort of stuff. I just hate playing them because Bulls just don't seem to match up with them. So what's your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I know this is always something that comes up every time we're playing them is how much you worry about playing them, and they do always provide an awful lot of difficulty for us in regards to their length and the way that they play. But it's not quite the same team as it was before, and they don't have quite the same makeup as they did previously. So I think I'm going to go for a win.
Yeah, I'll join you. We want to get back in that win column, don't we? And
we do.
It's not a must-win game, but it's getting that way if we want to create that little bit of distance and have that successful season of finishing in the play-in that we keep mentioning, as we mentioned before. And then on, I believe it's Saturday, Sunday morning for us, we will be taking on, back at the UC to take on some kind of Memphis Grizzlies team. God knows how many players are going to turn up to that one and who they're going to be. But
they are a mess right now through no fault of their own, and they're just absolutely riddled all the way through with injury.
Yeah, and they still beat Golden State last night.
Yeah, but anybody can beat Golden State, right? Apart from us.
For 3 quarters, yeah. Or 2 quarters, whatever it was.
Yeah.
It's if there's ever a trap game, this is going to be one, because we're going to be facing Grizzlies G League team. Coincidentally, just signed Scottie Pippen Jr. to a 2-way tonight.
I saw that actually. Yeah, that's interesting.
So is Pippen going to be back at the UC?
No.
Well, Junior might be.
yeah. Pippen.
I mean, you got to go win for this.
Yes,
but it's going to be a difficult win. It's probably going to be a difficult watch, So, 2 dubs from them, 2 for me. And then next week we start the West Coast trip with first off with a trip to Phoenix to face the Suns. I believe it's a 2 a.m. tip on Tuesday morning for us.
Wonderful.
I can't wait. And the fact we're going to face the Suns as well makes it even more exciting. Not big 3, over there, or 2.5, depending on how you see Bradley Beal.
Yeah.
We've already lost to them this season, I think, haven't we?
Yeah,
quite a close game. They won it.
It was a close game. Yeah, I can't remember the score, but it was close enough anyway.
Yeah, I can't even remember if it was during the bad Bulls or the good Bulls that we've seen. I think it was more the bad Bulls.
It was bad Bulls. Yeah.
I'm going to say L for that one. I'm going to lose it.
Yeah, I was going to say a loss as well, but just purely to be controversial, I'm going to say a win. Even though deep down I don't know if I feel that way. And I think I mentioned this the last time we were playing Phoenix as well. One of my fellow coaches from my All Stars team, as we call them, the Open to Everybody team, Claire is a Suns fan. I know she listens to the podcast, so Claire, I'm sticking with a dub just so I can give you a bit of stick if we do take the win.
Every cloud.
Exactly.
So yeah, I've got nothing else. I'm assuming you don't, as
Nope.
It's getting very, very late. Just for a change.
Yeah,
for us.
I want to go to bed.
Yeah, so do I. So yeah, like I say, chances are back next Tuesday now. And once again, thanks to Dan and Sal for joining us. Do go check them out. Give them a bit of support. Follow them on all the socials and stuff like that. You never know what could come from stuff like that. So, as always, I've been Matt, and thanks for listening. You can find me on Twitter at MattSearedUK, and you can find us on all the socials at SearedUK.
And you'll find me on Twitter at Neill UK. On behalf of both Matt and myself and the Fans First Sports Network, thanks once again to everyone for tuning in, whether you're watching or listening. Please do subscribe, rate and review, and give us a thumbs up on YouTube. It helps us to keep providing you with the content. And from us both, do remember, it's a Chicago Bulls thing wherever in the world you are supporting this team. Until next time, see red people and go Bulls.